The lights of the arena burned white-hot as two very different fighters made their way toward the center of the ring, each carrying the weight of expectation on their shoulders in wildly different ways. On one side stood Ryan Garcia, the electric, fast-handed star out of Victorville, California, a former WBC interim lightweight world champion, whose name alone could sell out an arena. On the other side waited Mario Barrios, the reigning and defending WBC welterweight champion of the world, a naturally bigger man with a 5-inch reach advantage and 21 inches of frame that made him look every bit the intimidating giant standing across from the challenger. This was not just a fight. This was a genuine clash of styles, size, and speed, and from the very first introduction, the tension in the building was impossible to ignore. Garcia entered fighting out of the red corner, guided by his head trainer Henry Garcia, dressed in red trimmed with gold, officially weighing in at a lean and sharp 147 pounds even. Across the ring, Barrios prepared in the blue corner under the watchful eye of his own head trainer, Joe Goosen, wearing black trimmed with green, carrying his championship pedigree into the ring like armor. The introductions rolled on, the crowd roared, and Michael Buffer-style grandeur filled the air as both men were called forward for their final instructions. The referee reminded them to protect themselves at all times and to listen to his commands, a routine reminder that, in hindsight, would carry far more weight than anyone in that moment could have predicted. Because when the bell rang and the fight actually began, Ryan Garcia did not wait. He did not feel out his much bigger opponent. He did not respect the size difference or ease into the contest the way conventional wisdom might suggest a smaller man should against a naturally bigger welterweight title holder. Instead, Garcia exploded forward and let his right hand fly early, and in one single, thunderous connection, Mario Barrios hit the canvas. The building erupted. Commentators at ringside were left grasping for words, calling it a shocker, because nobody, not even the most devoted Ryan Garcia believers, expected the challenger to drop the reigning welterweight champion of the world within the opening moments of round one. It was, by every account, one of the most electrifying opening rounds of Ryan Garcia's career. The punch itself was clean, compact, and perfectly timed, a right hand that found its target before Barrios could properly set his feet or read the distance. Analysts immediately began dissecting the knockdown, noting that while it was a legitimate, fight-altering blow, Barrios would need to tighten up defensively if he hoped to survive the rest of the fight. He could not continue getting caught clean. He needed to start slipping punches, ducking under Garcia's combinations, and using every inch of his considerable size advantage to smother the smaller man's speed. The knockdown was a wake-up call, and how Barrios responded to it would define the rest of the contest. To his credit, Barrios did not fall apart. He rose, composed himself, and by the second round began working to establish his own game plan, targeting the body and trying to slow Garcia down by draining his legs and his stamina. There was a moment where former champion Luke Campbell, working ringside as an analyst, pointed out that Barrios needed to consistently target the body if he hoped to wrestle momentum back into his favor. Bend the knees, duck under the looping shot, force Garcia to fight at a different level than the one he had opened the fight with. It was sound strategy, the kind of adjustment that separates championship-level fighters from pretenders, but the challenge remained that Garcia looked, in these early rounds, like he was operating on an entirely different plane than the champion across from him. Still, Barrios showed flashes of the skill that had earned him his title in the first place. He landed a crisp uppercut that drew praise from the commentary team, and moments later followed with a left hook that Garcia absorbed well, proving that whatever fragility people assumed the smaller man might carry into a fight against a naturally bigger opponent simply was not there. Garcia was throwing in higher volume than Barrios through the opening rounds, mixing his jab with check hooks, refusing to let the champion settle into any kind of rhythm. Every time Barrios tried to plant his feet and load up on a single power shot, Garcia was already gone, resetting distance, working behind that jab, reminding everyone watching why his hand speed, has always been considered among the most dangerous weapons in the sport. By the time the fight reached the midway point of the first act, the scorecards, at least unofficially in the eyes of the commentary team, heavily favored Garcia. The knockdown alone was worth its weight in the math of professional boxing judging, but it was the manner in which Garcia was winning nearly every remaining exchange that made the outcome feel less and less in doubt. One commentator remarked on how shocking it was that Garcia could move a bigger, naturally stronger welterweight champion so easily with his right hand. Another pointed out that Barrios simply was not dipping his head or making Garcia miss enough to change the tempo of the fight. You cannot simply absorb Ryan Garcia's punches and hope survival alone wins rounds. You have to make him miss. You have to disrupt his rhythm. And through these opening rounds, Barrios had not yet found the formula to do that. There were moments of hope for the champion. A right hand of his own landed clean, prompting analysts to wonder aloud whether Barrios had rediscovered his power, whether his own right hand might become the equalizer in a fight where he was being outworked everywhere else. Garcia, for his part, showed the kind of counterpunching instincts that only elite-level fighters possess, catching Barrios coming forward and making him pay for every aggressive step. It became clear that whatever Barrios had shown in previous fights, including questions about his intensity and finishing instincts in bouts against opponents like Rolando Romero, this version of Barrios needed to summon something more if he hoped to turn the tide against Garcia's blistering pace. Then came the sequence that effectively ended any debate about who was winning this fight. Barrios, perhaps growing desperate or simply overextending in an attempt to close the distance, stepped into a counter and found himself off balance, stumbling as he tried to recover his footing. Garcia, sensing the opportunity, pounced. A right hand snapped through Barrios' guard. Then another. The champion's legs, which had carried him through so many rounds as a title holder, suddenly looked unsteady beneath him. The crowd, sensing blood, rose to its feet as Garcia unleashed a combination that left Barrios stumbling around the ring, visibly hurt, searching for his balance in a way that no reigning champion ever wants to be seen doing on the sport's biggest stages. What followed was pure demolition. Garcia landed shot after shot, an uppercut here, a clean right hand there, each connecting through gaps in a guard that had once looked so tight and disciplined but now seemed to have no answers left. Commentators struggled to find new words to describe what they were witnessing, repeating that this was simply too much speed, too much firepower, too many clean shots landing without response. Barrios' own corner, led by the experienced Joe Goosen, could be heard urging him to keep both hands up, to stop leaning so heavily on that single right hand as his only path back into the fight. But Garcia was not interested in giving him time to regroup. He kept the pressure on, kept finding the target, and kept reminding everyone watching exactly why so many considered him one of the most explosive punchers in the entire welterweight division. As the fight moved into its final stages, the outcome felt almost predetermined despite the shock value of how it had unfolded. Ryan Garcia had promised his fans a classic performance, and by every measure he delivered on that promise in spectacular fashion. When the final bell rang and the judges' scorecards were read aloud, the numbers told the story clearly. All three judges scored the bout overwhelmingly in Garcia's favor, with one card reading 118 to 109, a definitive, unanimous decision that left no room for controversy or debate. Ryan Garcia, the challenger who had once been questioned for underwhelming performances against elite competition, had not only beaten a naturally bigger, reigning welterweight world champion, he had dominated him from the opening seconds all the way through the final horn. When his name was announced as the new WBC welterweight champion of the world, the arena exploded into chants of his name, a raw, unfiltered eruption of noise that echoed the sentiments shared by nearly everyone who had watched the fight unfold. This was not a lucky win. This was not a split decision